I'm recording this in the cab of the grain truck because the cab smells like twine, dust, and the mesquite smoke that still clung to my hair when the lights went warm over the Frio River and the band tuned up, because if I don't say it while my hands are still shaking, I'll think I made the whole thing up again. Like the way small towns smooth over ruts by driving them 100 times until the road forgets it was ever broken, and I have been smoothing for months. Sanding every snag inside our marriage with chores and cinnamon rolls and ledger columns that do balance if you squint at them long enough. The dance was the kind we always said we'd grow old inside. The kind with paper lanterns snagged in pecan branches with Mr. Duarte slow-cooking brisket in a steel drum behind the VFW. With the creek cold and black beyond the string lights and the teenagers daring each other to jump anyway, and Sawyer looked like every photograph I ever forgave him in, the sunburned neck, the mechanic's knuckles, the smile he does before singing like he's about to confess and then buys himself more time with a joke. I noticed the setlist taped to the floor. A moth sketched in the corner, wings spread like the luminous ones that slap the screens at the feed store some humid nights, desperate for a different moon. I noticed, too, the turquoise pick he once called Lucky clipped to his mic stand. And I told myself it was mine, still mine. Though the first time I saw Laurel Finch wear anything bright was 3 months back at the river tubes when she wore a bead like that at her throat. And I remember thinking how foolish bright can look on a woman who does most things quiet. A woman who stands behind the counter counting life jackets like prayers. And I decided right then that bright could be a kindness I could leave to other women. The opener was harmless, the second song was the one that got the veterans two-stepping. The third was for the Hayden's anniversary and everyone clapped at the line about choosing again, and then Sawyer lifted his hand to hush the clatter. And his voice turned the shape it takes when he goes honest in front of a crowd, which is all edges, no sugar, and he said, "We've got a birthday in the house, this one's for you, Laurel," and the crowd did the rest. Because they know how to sing a name until it's heavy enough to carry anything. And the first chord of our song fell into the dirt like a ring you can't find. And I swear on the pecans it was our song because I remember the first time he wrote it on a napkin at the diner after a hailstorm. I remember him grinning like he'd stapled a sunrise to paper. I remember how he said it sounded like me, how he said the chorus rhymed with my laugh. Though maybe that's something I picked up later so the story would lie down and behave. The lanterns swayed, the couples pulled their loved ones closer. Even the teenagers forgot they had posture to perform. And Laurel, who is not a woman who likes a fuss, stood there with both hands over her mouth like someone had carried a newborn into the room, and I could feel the heat climb through my blouse. A separate weather inside my skin, but I didn't move. You don't leave during your own song, even if it isn't yours anymore, and he sang the honey parts soft and the barbed parts with a kind of mercy, and a little girl in braids drifting past me smelled like river water and dryer sheets, and somewhere behind us, a generator coughed and caught and the fairy lights steadied as if the world had decided to cooperate for once. When the chorus came, he looked not at me but over me. The way you look at a ridge when you're aiming for the road beyond. And his eyes found her like a habit he didn't know he had, and the crowd, our very own choir of good neighbors, sang her name between the lines. And I remembered I had given him that pick last fall when the river rose and we spent 3 days ferrying dog food and baby formula in the grain truck, and he said he'd never lose it. And I said nothing is never, and he kissed my wrist with the grease still under his nails and Made it look like a vow, and tonight the pick flashed at Laurel's throat when she reached up to fix a curl that didn't need fixing. And you can tell yourself a lot about how a person comes to own a thing if you need to sleep at night, but the truth is it looked better on her. Because bright always finds a way to deserve itself. I did not cry, this is important. I want to hear my voice say it. I did not cry, I did not make a scene. I pressed the bottom of my cup to my mouth until the ice knocked my teeth like distant hail, and I said the Lord's Prayer backward the way my grandma taught me for stopping nosebleeds and danger, and in the bridge he bent the note like it was something that could still be rescued. And for a foolish second my knees remembered the first night he played it in the shop bay with the overhead lights buzzing and the smell of hot metal. And then someone behind me yelled, "Happy birthday, Laurel." And the room made space for that happiness, like happiness is something that needs more oxygen than grief, and when the applause landed it landed the way a train lands, late but all of a piece, and I said out loud inside my skull, "Rhea, remember this exactly as it is, no kinder, no meaner, and that is why I am here in the truck now." Recording the precise shape of the moth on the paper, the exact timbre of the generator catching, the texture of the dust on my tongue. Because later I will be tempted to tell it prettier or crueler, and both are lies. And tomorrow when the town pretends it didn't see the way my husband's mouth learned a new name, I will have this, my own voice, unadorned, saying, "He sang our song for her birthday." Not mine. I told myself I could chalk it up to stage banter. That Sawyer only said her name because a crowd wants names the way cattle want salt. Because noise without a target will spook them, but then he leaned into the mic, tilted it closer like it was a private conversation, and he said, "You've carried me farther than I knew I could go, Laurel, and I owe you this one." And the crowd whistled the way they do at rodeos when a rider sticks the landing. And I thought maybe he was talking about the shop, maybe Laurel had bought parts on credit. Maybe she'd helped the band haul speakers. Maybe it could be anything at all except what it sounded like. But the way his eyes softened like bread left too long in the sun told me it wasn't about speakers, it wasn't about kindness, it was about something I wasn't invited into. The dedication broke across me like a flash flood, fast, loud, carrying everything familiar downstream, and I tried to remember if he had ever said something like that about me in public, if he had ever allowed the town to witness that softness. But I could only pull up memories of him cracking jokes about my bookkeeping, teasing about my casseroles, the kind of affection small towns understand because it doesn't leave them with questions, and I realized maybe I had been so careful never to give them something to whisper about that I'd starved myself of evidence, so now, when Laurel received the kind of declaration I used to imagine, I had no ledger of my own to balance it against. Behind me, Mrs. Yarbrough nudged her sister and whispered, "That's the girl from the tube rental, ain't it?" And her sister laughed like scandal tastes sweet. And I wanted to turn around and tell them they were wrong, that Laurel was nobody, that Sawyer was only fooling, but my tongue stuck to my teeth because what if they weren't wrong? What if I was the nobody, the extra verse in a song already promised elsewhere? I remember thinking about the turquoise pick again, how it winked in the lantern light. And I asked myself if maybe I had given it to Laurel once, as a neighborly favor. Maybe I had misplaced it at the river and she had found it fair and square. And I am telling you this because I need you to hear how my mind twisted to protect him. How I became the unreliable witness to my own life, excusing, bending, imagining alternate histories so that the man on stage could remain the man I married and not the man stealing a piece of me note by note. I gripped the steering wheel of the grain truck after, knuckles white, and whispered, "You'll write this down wrong if you don't record it, so here it is." He said her name twice. Once for the crowd, once for himself. And each syllable left my skin like a wasp sting that doesn't welt until morning. And I clapped anyway, because in Leakey you clap for your people, even if they forget you are theirs. The music broke like a harvest done too soon, cut off by the noise of folding chairs and the shuffle of boots on gravel. And I told myself I would slip out, slide home under the dark pecan trees. Pretend I'd only come for the brisket, but small towns don't let you exit quiet. They pull you back with every neighbor who thinks their smile is medicine. And I found myself backstage, if you can call a row of coolers and a plywood ramp a stage, watching Sawyer coil chords with a tenderness I hadn't seen him use on our marriage in years. The band boys moved around me like I was an invisible post, all nods and tight mouths. And one of them, Caleb with the crooked teeth, muttered, "Shoulda just said the song was for everybody." But when he noticed me he blushed hard enough to light the cooler. And I understood then that they all knew, that the dedication wasn't some slip of tongue. It was a pattern rehearsed in garages, in whispered setlists. In the silence that falls when a secret becomes common, Sawyer caught my eye, lifted his chin in that half-greeting half-dismissal, and said, "Headin' out, Rhea?" "I'll pack up late," as if I were a stranger who'd only borrowed his last name for convenience. And before I could form an answer, Laurel herself appeared, holding 2 cups of lemonade like they were communion, and she handed him one without looking, the turquoise pick gleaming at her throat when the string light flickered, and she said, soft but not secret, "Happy you remembered," and he laughed, low and guilty, the way he used to laugh when we skipped tithe. I left before they noticed the way my breath had gone shallow, and the gravel under my boots felt like it wanted to shout for me. The only open place at that hour was the Exxon on Main, the one with a single pump and a Coke machine that sticks on grape. And I leaned against the humming cooler inside, trying to cool my skin, when Mrs. Duarte came in for ice and glanced at me with those eyes that weigh out sorrow like beef cuts. And she said, "Mija, don't go making excuses for a man who already rehearsed them." And I almost asked her what she meant, but the clerk, Danny, barely 17, spilled a stack of flyers, and as I bent to help, I saw one crumpled page marked with the band's next set list. A moth doodled in the corner again, and the song circled, the one that used to be ours, with Laurel's initials in Sawyer's handwriting beside it. I pocketed it without thinking, a thief of my own proof, and when Danny tried to smile at me, I realized my face must have told the whole town already, because he looked away quick, the way kids do when they've seen too much. I drove home with the setlist crinkling in my pocket like a confession letter. And every mile of county road felt longer than the last. Because sometimes the quietest confrontations aren't words at all, they're the things everyone else dares to acknowledge before you do. I used to believe that secrets in a town this small rot quick, that the summer heat ferments them until they bubble up through gossip at the feed store or in the prayer requests at church, but I've learned they can linger like cedar smoke in a closet, clinging quiet until the right draft pulls them free. And the draft started the morning after the dance when I balanced the books at the store and found a crumpled receipt wedged in Sawyer's coverall pocket. A slip from the Hill Country Music Shop 3 counties over, listing a guitar string set, a leather strap, and one turquoise pick with engraving, an order dated 2 weeks after our anniversary, when he told me money was tight and we couldn't afford the trip to San Antonio I'd planned. The handwriting on the engraving details line was his. And the word scrawled there was LF at. First my eyes tricked themselves into thinking it said RK. But the curl of the F cut like barbed wire across my denial. I told myself maybe he was buying a gift for a friend, maybe for Caleb, maybe for charity. Because a mind trained on forgiveness will bend logic until it snaps, but then at the diner, while the ceiling fan squeaked overhead, I heard Laurel laugh with the waitress. And around her neck glinted the very pick. The Luna moth etched sharp as if it might fly straight out of the turquoise. And I swear it pulsed when she leaned forward to sip her coffee, as though mocking me for not recognizing my own handwriting of fate. I wanted to scream, to demand she hand it back, but instead I left exact change and walked into the noon sun, blinding myself on purpose. 2 days later, at the feed store, the fax machine jammed and spit out half a page from the tube rentals line, an invoice for stage rental lights, signed Sawyer K. and, though the numbers were cut off, the notes section read, birthday set. Include special spotlight for dedication, and the paper smelled faintly of river mildew. Like proof sweated out by the machine itself, I folded it, slid it into the same pocket as the setlist I'd stolen, feeling them whisper against each other, evidence breeding evidence. That evening, while loading hay bales, I noticed Sawyer humming. Not the tune itself but the harmony line he only ever used when practicing alone. The line he told me once was too intimate for a crowd. And yet he hummed it while his hands moved with muscle memory. As if it no longer belonged to me. As if intimacy could migrate like birds from one throat to another. I went to the church yard sale Saturday, hoping to barter peace. But in the cardboard box of donated books I found a journal with Laurel's name inside. And though it wasn't mine to touch, a folded note marked the page, a lyric draft in Sawyer's handwriting. The chorus rewritten with her name half hidden in the margin. Like even his creativity had defected. I shut it quick, dropped it back. But the heat in my palms said guilt clung to me now too. By the time I returned home, every object in our house began accusing me. The coffee mug with chipped enamel, the boots by the door, the smell of grease and cedar, they all hummed with the same question. How long had I been a footnote in my own life? And when I opened the dresser drawer for Sawyer's work shirts, a scrap of ribbon fluttered out. River blue, smelling faintly of sunscreen and mesquite, the kind Laurel ties her hair with. The pick used to mean love salvaged from floodwater, but now it meant evidence. And the Luna moth, once a symbol of resilience, now signaled how easily light lures a soul to burn. I sat on the back porch tonight, cicadas drilling holes into the dark, and forced myself to untangle the thread I'd been clutching so tight I mistook it for rope. The song was never ours. It was Sawyer's before it was mine. Maybe Laurel's before it was anyone's, and I am the one who dressed it up with meaning. Sewed my initials into the seams like a child stitching her name into a borrowed quilt. I remembered the diner napkin, the one he scrawled on after the hailstorm. How I told myself it was my laugh that fit the rhyme, my freckles that matched the chorus. But when I pulled open the cedar chest tonight, looking for the proof, I found the original napkin folded in a Bible, and the ink said, L, not R. A letter I had looked at 100 times and made into my own. Because the heart will forge documents if it needs to, I wanted to believe I had been chosen. That the universe rerouted his song to me, but the evidence grew like weeds. Caleb's drunken mumble at the gas station, the doodled moths on every setlist. The turquoise pick engraved not with my initials but hers, and now this napkin. Thin as onion skin, whispering that the story I'd told myself all these years was counterfeit. The cruelest part is that Sawyer never corrected me when I claimed it. When I sang along too loud at weddings, when I told neighbors it was our song. He just smiled and let me, the way you let a child believe the county fair goat belongs to her. When everyone knows it's borrowed, maybe he thought it was mercy. Maybe he thought it was strategy. Because the year he let me believe it was mine was the same year we took the loan to expand the feed store, the same year his signature bound me as tight as vows. And what kind of wife picks a fight with the man whose name secures her roof? I swallowed the doubt, served supper, balanced books, and told myself I was lucky to have a melody at all. Now, realizing I have been living in a cover version, I feel both shame and fury. Because how do you indict a man for a lie you begged him to keep? The town would say I should have known. The girls at the diner will laugh that I was always too proud. And yet I also know some part of me chose blindness, because I feared what hunger feels like. When the music stops, tonight I held the napkin up to the porch light, watched the ink bleed through the fibers, and whispered the truth like a curse. The song was never mine, it was a gift recycled. And I am the one who gift wrapped it in denial. If there is guilt, maybe it is mine as much as his, for building a marriage on a borrowed chorus. For hearing Laurel and translating it into Rhea out of sheer need. I don't know whether that makes me victim or accomplice, but I do know this. History rewrites itself in the dark corners of small towns. And sometimes you only see the original draft when it's too late to edit. The river smelled of sunscreen, mesquite smoke, and wet limestone. The kind of smell that settles into your bones so you can't wash it out for days. And I knew before I parked the truck that I shouldn't have come. But the napkin in my pocket whispered like scripture, and I told myself I needed proof. One final ledger entry before the whole town rewrote my life for me. The birthday party spread itself across the gravel bar like a county fair shrunk-down picnic. Tables draped in plastic cloth, a sheet cake sweating under saran wrap. And Laurel's friends stringing lights between cypress trees while Sawyer tuned his guitar on a folding chair, his back curved like a question mark that already knew the answer. I stood at the edge where the water lapped at my boots, listening to kids shriek as they cannonballed from the rope swing, and every sound, the splash, the laughter, the twang of tuning strings, felt like it belonged to someone else's story. One I had wandered into without permission. When Sawyer strummed the opening chord, heads turned the way they do in church when the hymn begins. And Laurel blushed under the lights, that turquoise pick catching the glow like a beacon. I wanted to hate her, but the sight of her trembling hands made me wonder if she, too, had been carrying a secret too heavy to stand upright under. Halfway through the song, just as the chorus bent into the river air, she pressed a palm flat to her stomach. A gesture too quick for anyone else to read but clear to me, because I had done the same once. Years ago, before the miscarriage I never told the town about. My knees went soft as she whispered, almost lost under the music, for him. And Sawyer's eyes filled, the kind of wet that isn't about romance but grief. And I knew then what no one had said: they had a child once, or almost had. A child who existed in silence while I claimed a song that was written as lullaby before I even met him. The river roared in my ears though it barely moved. And the generator hummed behind the trees. And I gripped the napkin so hard the ink smeared into my skin, marking me with a name that wasn't mine. When the final chord died, the applause came thin. Polite, because even the town had felt the fracture. The wrongness of singing one woman's birthday with another woman's melody of mourning. Laurel blew out candles that sputtered in the wind, and Sawyer laid his hand over hers like a man who had lost something twice, and I thought, this is the proof I wanted, and it cuts deeper than any receipt or setlist. The truth is not that he loved her instead of me, but that he grieved with her in a way he never allowed with me. And grief is a kind of faithfulness too, one that leaves no room for witnesses. I walked back to the truck as the cypress shadows stretched long, and I whispered into this recorder so I wouldn't lie to myself later. The song was a cradle, not a love letter, and I have been singing someone else's child to sleep for years. The house feels too quiet tonight, though the cicadas still chant outside and the fridge hums steady. It is the kind of quiet that comes after a storm has stripped the fields, nothing left to rattle, nothing left to cling, only the outline of what used to stand. Sawyer came home late, boots dragging, guitar case bumping the doorframe, and he asked nothing, offered nothing. Only placed the case by the wall like a coffin and showered until the pipes screamed. And I sat at the kitchen table staring at the napkin with its blurred initial, the receipt with its carved betrayal, the setlist with her name circled. All the proof I thought I wanted, but which now feels less like justice and more like clutter I can't throw away. He did not apologize, he did not confess. He only looked at me once across the table, eyes hollow as a barn after auction. And I understood he was offering me a choice, not words, either continue the performance, clap on cue, share the bed with silence, or walk away. Rebuild with nothing but my name and the truth I've recorded here. I thought of mamas saying that every woman in Real County ends up known by one story, either the one she chooses or the one chosen for her, and I don't know yet which one mine will be. Tomorrow the town will talk, the diner will buzz. Laurel will be pitied or envied depending on the speaker. And Sawyer will fix carburetors as if nothing cracked. But me, I will decide whether to burn these papers in the mesquite pit out back or save them for a courtroom, or maybe for a daughter I may never have, to prove I was not crazy, not blind, only human. I want to tell you I left him tonight, that I packed a bag and drove past the river toward San Antonio. But the truth is I am still here, feet bare on the cool linoleum, listening to the drip from the faucet sink with the pulse in my temple. And I do not know which road I will take when morning comes, maybe forgiveness, maybe vengeance, maybe something smaller like indifference. All I know is that the turquoise pick gleamed once in my palm when I picked it up from the counter, and instead of rage I felt a strange release. As if the moth etched there was reminding me that light destroys as much as it guides. I set it back down, gently, like returning a relic to the altar of someone else's church, and whispered the only prayer I still trust: let me not rewrite this wrong tomorrow. Let me remember it exactly as it is. If you're listening to this, maybe years from now, know that the song ended without ending, that the applause never really died. It just faded into the river night, and somewhere between the chorus and the silence, I misplaced my marriage. Whether I ever choose to find it again, I leave unsaid.